Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder and prep coach. Today's guest is Kyle Wilkes. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
For sure, Kyle. So I'm excited to have just a great chat with you today. The first question that I like to ask all of my guests is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
So I would say a few of my favorite bodybuilders, I have to say Jay Cutler. I'm a person that admires well-spoken individuals that really put in consistent hard work. Okay. And likewise, a rival of his, Kai Green, is someone else I also look up to more so for his psychological approach when it comes to training. I think training's underrated, to be honest with you. And he really kind of breaks it down in a way that makes you understand that, what the target muscle is and different mental cues that truly do help people that, some people are gifted and they don't have to think twice about contracting their bicep, whereas other people do struggle. And I learned a lot from just, observing and paying attention to that thought process.
Excellent. So the second question I like to start everything off with, Kyle, is at what age did you start lifting weights, and why did you start lifting weights at that age?
So I really didn't start lifting weights until I was 18. Throughout high school, the only thing I lifted was textbooks, and then I played like Xbox a lot. So I did play sports as a baseball and basketball player, but I always skipped out on the workouts and stuff. And ultimately, I got to a point in my life where I could either pursue education or pursue playing like a Division II or III sport. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I have to choose education. So I was always a textbook, a nerd, so to speak, when it comes to things. I loved math. I loved writing, reading, things like that. So when I got into school, my roommate at the time, the random roommate, went to Rutgers University. And his name was Ted. And basically, he looked like a little bodybuilder, never competed, but he looked awesome. So to me, if I saw him, wow, I want to look like that. So I had just started getting into lifting that summer. We met up, and I remember he's like, "Oh, I love going to the gym, man. I'll show you." I played football, and I just remember trying to bench with him for the first time. I was lopsided. I couldn't even do 135. It was to me, it was embarrassing looking back. And I'm sure it's funny now coming full circle, but that's what got me into it, because to me, I still wanted to be competitive, but again, I wasn't going to jeopardize my education, to go to a lesser school just to play baseball or basketball. I know at the end of the day, for basketball, I got my work cut out for me. I'm not a taller fellow. My athleticism is not enough to carry me to that next level. So again, nothing against college athletes that pursue that, but for me, I was going to put everything into education.
Awesome. So I like to use that question, Kyle, to kind of transition into your backstory. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, where did you grow up? Just kind of paint that picture a little bit of your childhood, talk about, family, siblings, any extracurricular activities you played up to about high school. I know you mentioned you played a lot of Xbox. So just talk about your childhood up to about high school, and then we'll transition from there.
Yeah. So growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 14. Still lived together for a while, so it was a little weird story there. But ultimately, I had to switch transfer schools, and I went from one ethnic group of a school to a whole different diverse culture. So for me, it was a shock. It taught me a lot about life, so I was very grateful for that experience. Going through that as a kid, in our contemporary era, it's very popular for parents to split nowadays, as opposed to maybe 20, 30 years ago where, you didn't see that very often. So with that all going on, I do have an older sibling, 7 years. So he was always a role model for me. He excelled in school. He was an engineer, he has his master's in business. So he was always someone that was always constantly setting the bar high, to where when I was in grammar school, teachers would say, "Oh, you're Eddie's brother?" And he would be ranked 1, and I would try to, be ranked 1 as well. So when my parents had split up and stuff and I had to transfer schools, I was ranked 1 at the time. So, moving to a different school was something totally new. And that's when I kind of got brought into the politics of sports, because again, I was playing at one school that was in a different division. And, a lot of the kids in the newer school played the AAU, which is like intramural, they played in off season. So for me, if I was playing baseball in the Northeast area, you can only play during the summer pretty much, maybe the spring, but because of the weather, you can't play in the winter. Whereas these kids would play indoor. So going into tryouts, they know who's on their team. So for me, that was challenging. So that was part of my upbringing, kind of going through. I felt like at times, it was between a rock and a hard place to where, I had my father that I was no longer living with. I wanted to keep him in my life. So the legal system got involved a bit. So it was a little convoluted and I was kind of tossed around. But in the classroom, again, my goal always to get 100 on a test. So whenever I'd always ask teacher who got the highest score. And, no bragging here, but that was my goal every single time. I got a 93, I wasn't satisfied. That means I was only 93% good enough on this exam. So yeah, and from there, again, I played sport-wise. Basketball and baseball are my two favorites. I didn't play football, more so because I didn't have a ride in the summer. That's when the camps and tryouts would be. So I just stick to the basketball, baseball. It's the easiest, cheapest sports to play. You just need a ball and a hoop, and then a glove and a ball for baseball, right? And a bat. So yeah.
So you mentioned Xbox earlier. Was that kind of an outlet for you in those younger years?
Yeah, I mean, I found I loved playing the sport games on Xbox, and then I got into like Gears of War, and Xbox Live, and that's what my friends would do. So they would come home from school. I would, if I wasn't studying, which I did do a lot of my time, I would just play Xbox. That's all I would do. I'd never go out or drink, party. My first sip of alcohol was in college. Always said I wouldn't drink. So that was my mindset. I just cared about school. If I had a sport, which is only 4 of the 12 months of the year, pretty much, other than that, I was playing Xbox and I was enjoying killing zombies, playing Call of Duty and stuff like that.
I love it, man. That's great. So I'm really curious, Kyle, the education side of things in terms of how you got so focused on your education and your studies. Was that an influence from your parents, or did that come from something within you personally?
I think it was an influence on my parents. I mean, growing up, again, my parents were more old school. My father, if I do something wrong, he'll hit me, and I think that's a lost art to a degree. And, there's pros and cons to it and how severe things would be, but I was scared. That's one person to this day. Like, I am scared of letting down. So if I did bad in sports, like I knew when I got home that day, even if I got 3 hits, if I struck out, I know what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear about that at bat that I struck out. And that carried right over to the classroom. So again, like if I didn't get all A's, oh, you got to be here. What happened? It doesn't matter if everything else is perfect. It's, oh, you did this wrong. How can you be better? And I just took that as, challenging myself to be better. I never looked at it as, bringing me down. And I think nowadays in our contemporary era, people are not so receptive to feedback and people are very touchy. So when you try to give someone feedback, and I learned it through coaching, you got to really read the person. How are they going to respond? Are they going to be depressed about it? Or are they going to say, you know what, man, like I'm going to show you. And for me, it was always, well, my brother set the bar here. I want to be better. And I just always chased that in the back of my mind. Like if he could do it, I know I could do a better job,
Cool. Very cool. So let's talk about when you were getting kind of toward the end of high school. What was your mindset in terms of what you wanted to do in terms of studying in college? What did you want to be, quote unquote, when you grew up? And then how did that unfold once you got to college?
So growing up, ironically, I always just wanted to be a baseball player. That was my thought process. Again, reality sinks in a little bit. Had the politics in high school to where I just wouldn't make the team. And I was really good at math and science. Sorry, I can't speak. And basically my brother's an engineer. And for that reason, I said, I will not follow you anymore. You've carried me this far, where you've challenged me, but now I'm going to go into the area in which I'm the weakest, which was business. So I started applying to different schools. I got a full scholarship to Rutgers University for studying. That was ultimately where I chose to go to school. Small fact there, I actually looked into schools in Florida, University of Florida, which is 99% in-state. And the only reason I applied to Rutgers is because my father said, you have to apply to one school in state. You'd be a fool not to. So money aside, I chose the school my brother didn't go to, which was, he went to TCNJ, the college in New Jersey, which is a great school. So I said, okay, I'll choose Rutgers. Everyone chooses Rutgers. It's not a big deal. And what made me stay there, money aside, was when I was in Florida and they mentioned, oh, it's really hard to get in here. I said, I'm already accepted. And they looked at me and they said, where are you from? And I said, New Jersey. And they said, why wouldn't you go to Rutgers? And that was the first time in my head I said, wow, someone knows Rutgers. So long story short, I started factoring the fact that I wouldn't be able to just drive home. And I just felt like for the first time, I questioned my judgment. And I said, you know what, if I move down here, I'll probably never come back. My life would be totally different. So I'm going to go to Rutgers. It's a diverse school. You can, at any school I feel in the world you go to, school is what you make of it. The group of friends you select to hang yourself around, you'll adapt to the people around your circle, right? So that was the mindset there. And I chose to study business because that was my weakest. I said, I don't want to do the math and science route. I will not depend on my brother for a job and follow him forever up the corporate ladder. So I said, I'm going to go the business route. It gives me a lot of options.
Cool. So how did your studies go in terms of business, and how was your overall college experience, Kyle?
So my college experience from day one was very unique. I was not the most sociable person. I was kind of a introvert to a degree. Again, I was a nerd. So in school, I didn't hang out with the cool kids or the jocks. They knew who I was from maybe some sports, but I wasn't someone you're going to see out at a party on Friday or Saturday, that's for sure. And when I got to school, like I mentioned, my random roommate was that jock. He looked awesome physically. He was that social butterfly, so he would get all the girls. So my life changed drastically. I wound up joining a fraternity and I became an individual. I had a new beginning. And that's what I learned is when you go to college, it doesn't matter how cool, quote unquote, you are in high school. No one knows your story. You can write, you have a new pen, a new page. And that's how I took it literally. And I said, this is the person I want to be. I want to get into lifting. I want to challenge myself. I don't have to depend on any team not showing up for me because, when you get into the weight room, it's you in the mirror, right? Most of the time you have a good lifting partner that obviously helps, but I'm the one who's got to eat the food. I'm the one who does the cardio. I'm the one that can challenge myself and be here 7 days a week if I'd like, so that was that.
Very cool. So who was the first actual IFBB pro or top NPC athlete bodybuilder that you kind of saw? Was it through a magazine or was it in person? Do you remember who that person was?
So I would say at the time growing up, there was a good local bodybuilder. His name was Scott Ruseo. He was nationally qualified. And then also Christian Coronado. So he was the bodybuilder of my town, so to speak. So he was sponsored by Universal and Animal. So I looked up to those guys and I said, oh, wow, okay. How long have they been lifting? What's their story like? They had a couple of years on me for sure. Scott, a little bit more than me. And I just said, I just want to learn as much as I can. So lifting with my roommate, I put on a good amount of size just because I was a newbie, so to speak, right? And I remember I graduated high school, 175, 180, chubby fat. And then by the time my freshman year, I think I was 230. I was fat, but I put on a good amount of size to where someone would see me and say oh, what did you do?
Excellent. So let's talk about when you first actually started to step into the competition realm. And why don't you, if you don't mind, Kyle, just unpack your competition history, maybe talk about some of the highs, some of the lows, and just some of those experiences, please.
Yeah. So the first time I wanted to do a show was back in 2013. I had dieted. I was home for the summer. So I have about 15 week break to be home before I go back to school. And again, school always would still be number one. So I don't want things to interfere. So I started dieting down. I think I was up to 250. I was fat for sure. And I got down to 200. I remember I was 3 weeks out and I would always be posing with my buddy at the time. And he was also doing the show and he was on track. He looked good, where he should be. And that's when I realized I had a coach at the time and I just mentioned, hey, I don't look right. I understand. So this is just gonna be a new reset point for me. So I remember I went back to school that year, it was my last year, my senior year. Actually, it was my junior at the time. And basically everyone was really impressed because I went from that fat kid to, I was in shape. I wasn't stage lean, but I was in shape. And then I had a new set point. So then finally the following year, I said, I'm gonna graduate. I'm gonna do this the right way. So I finally did that. I got up to 250 again, dieted down. I remember I stepped on stage at 197 with light heavyweight. And my first show, I lost to Mike Charles. You know, he's a great, he actually wound up being a client of mine. And he's in the tri-state area, and we're awesome friends. And he's someone I look up to when it comes to lifting, because that kid he can lift with anyone, you know, he outworks anyone, truly. So that was my first show. Then I took 2 years off, came back to the stage again. I was about 210, having definitely a better look to me. And then my most recent competitive history was in 2018. I remember I was always someone growing up, I was always fat. Okay. I was definitely an endomorph. And basically for me, mentally, you know, something I strive myself on now is reading people's body language in terms of how they're going to perform. So for me, I know when I'm fat, I don't want to take my shirt off. I don't feel very confident in the gym. I'm tired all the time. So running a little leaner, the system makes me feel better. I'm more confident and happy. And if I can do that, and that's going to translate into the gym and me being confident enough to take the progress pictures, to follow the diet. So from there, I competed at a show in the Bahamas in 2018. In December, I did basically, it was like a 6-week prep. I remember at the time I was at a wedding, and again, I was in good shape. And they mentioned, like, you know, is this something we're going on vacation here? We're going on vacation. We're going to do a show, and then we're going to stay a week after. And I said, oh, like, can I do that? And I said, okay, so let's see what happens. So I did a 6-week prep, got into pretty good shape, to be honest with you. Winded up trying to come down and weight a little bit. And basically I stepped on stage at like 223, 224. I placed third in the open heavies. And from there, I most recently competed this past weekend, actually, just to qualify for nationals this year, which is my goal. And I stepped on this stage at 245. So, you know, I usually take about 2 years off in between. And during that time, I just try to be a leader of the pack, so to speak, right? So I'm not someone who really misses check-ins. I'm not someone who misses meals. And, you know, I've learned over the years the dangers of bodybuilding in terms of body dysmorphia. You know, I'm still that same person. I still think I'm fat. Nothing was ever, you know, people could say, Kyle, you look great. You're the biggest person here. To me, I still don't see that, you know, and that's the struggle that I still deal with to this day. And the reality of the situation, you know.
So let's talk about that, if you don't mind, a little bit more, Kyle. The body dysmorphia. How do you work through that mentally, right? Because those of us that compete in bodybuilding, I think we all have different issues and struggles, and that's just any human being, right? Sometimes I think some of those mental issues and struggles are magnified when you are competing in a sport like bodybuilding. How do you work through that mentally so that you can be in a healthier mind frame?
So for me, when I really started to perform better, I actually paired up with Nick Walker back in 2018. He was in New Jersey. We messaged each other a little bit on Instagram, and he mentioned that he liked one of the gyms I was training at. And he mentioned, you know, he asked me when I trained. I mentioned, you know, I work all day because I always had a corporate job and coaching. And I said, I usually train at 6 p.m. every night. This is where I'll train. And we made plans to just lift together. And we were supposed to lift together 2 days later. I remember he said, oh, we're going to train. We're going to do legs or something like that. And I wake up the next morning to a message. He said, oh, what are you training today? I said, back. He says, 6 o'clock. I said, 6 o'clock. He's like, I'll be there. So long story short, we show up that day. And that was the first, you know, this is back when Nick was getting a little bit of heat. He had just left Jeff Long, was with Cardone. So people poke fun at that kid, man. And again, I love the kid to death now. I'm glad we became best friends, because the stuff that he's dealt with, I don't think a lot of people could deal with. And getting back to coming full circle here, putting myself around people that are superior like that. And now I lift with Ian Valera every day. Those guys, I always feel small, you know? So like, to me, mentally, I can always be better. So it puts me in a perspective that where if they think I look okay, I must be doing something right, you know? So that was the trick that I like to play, so to speak, on myself is just surround myself around people that are better than me. And if I can do that, I have something to chase. And when I have something to chase, whether it's getting the highest grade in the class or just, getting stronger in the gym, I excel better. So that for me is what has really helped me a lot.
Excellent. So, your plan is to compete in nationals this year. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, yep, that's correct.
Cool. So, what is your goal at nationals this year? And then what is your long-term goal for yourself personally in terms of competitive bodybuilding?
So I'd say my goal this year is top 4 in the supers. I think with my shape coming in the condition I know I'm capable of, that's very achievable. And the reason I say top 4 and not necessarily win is not because I lack confidence, which is something I can definitely work on, but just because I'm realistic. There's guys that I know are doing that show that if they come in shape, they look like pros already. Being Carlos Thomas, for example, and we have guys like Nate Spear, who's been doing it for numerous years. And again, those are guys I look up to. I've watched them compete, so I know what they're going to bring to the table. And I just know if I bring my best, I know I can hang with them. So that's my goal in terms of this year. And then moving forward, to me, winning my pro card was never really, the accolade I'm chasing. I just wanted to be a really good prep coach and show people that, hey, I've walked the walk. I always tell people, I'll never tell you to do something that I know I didn't do already, probably, or that I wasn't capable of doing. And by doing that, you'd be surprised at just how many people really do appreciate it. And you don't see many good coaches, elite coaches, competing because it's super challenging to honestly make the right calls. So that's where I have good resources down the line to make sure I try to have people ready early. So when you're in really good shape, as I'm sure you've learned, you don't need crazy, there's no peak week magic. The diuretic is not going to take fat off of you. So I just always pride myself on making sure I'm communicating with people, understanding. I don't want people to feel like a number. And that's what's really helped me. So though I'm competing at nationals, and at this point, I'm adding more clients every day to nationals, which isn't the best idea for me. But I know if I have them where I need to have them, I'm going to be okay. And that'll keep my mind hopefully off of other things as well.
So, do you have a goal to one day reach pro status, or is that just not really any focus of yours?
I would say it's not the primary focus. I think as long as I'm healthy and as long as I'm not distracting my business from growing and doing a disservice to people, like if I compete this year and I realize I messed something up for one of my competitors, that'll probably be the end of it. I'll never I don't want to put myself next to someone on stage where they could possibly say, hey, you focus on yourself and not me. Because that's just a conversation that there's no win for anyone there. And I always put others first. That's my issue. So if I'm ever training with other people, what's your training split? I'll change mine. It's always been you first, me second. And at the end of the day, as you know, bodybuilding and prep is selfish. The successful people that are really good, you need to be selfish. You need to focus on yourself. That if you have a significant other, I always tell people, the joke is like, oh, well, you're prepping too. You didn't realize you're prepping, but now you are prepping, because if you don't want to participate, that relationship is going to end. And that's the reality of the situation,
Right. So are you prepping yourself right now for nationals, or do you have a coach?
So I work with Johnny Castellina. So he's the, I guess, quote unquote, founder of ProFX. So him and I work together coaching. He's been coaching me for numerous years now. I originally worked with Phil Vizzacaro before Johnny. So Phil helped me he was the pioneer, so to speak, with a lot of thought processes. I learned a ton from him. Training wise, he's one of the best I've ever really come across. If people actually take the time to understand what he's showing them and, put any, ego mantra aside of what people might see from forums, Phil's super intelligent when it comes to training. And I think if I don't feel a body part, if I have a question, I'm going to ask Phil, because he's going to make sure I feel the body part. Like I mentioned, going back to the first question with why I liked Kai Green, because of the thought process. And mentally, that's where everything starts. You can be super confident, or you can stress yourself out and ruin your look, or, it drives everything. That's the main focal point of anything in life, in my opinion.
So I want to step back into your story. So we kind of left off at college, and then we started unpacking your competition history. And then you mentioned just a little bit ago, as you were conversing, that you kind of always had a corporate job along with your coaching. So after you graduated college, professionally and career-wise, what did you step into right away?
I worked at Johnson & Johnson for a little bit. So there, I was part of the global clinical operations team. So I managed budget. Basically, my degree is in finance and BATE, business analytics, information technology. So I've always been a numerical person, as I mentioned, the mathematical background, and just understanding, business from a broader perspective and more forecasting and planning. So after J&J, I had left to go to Prudential. The reason I had done that, more the investment banking side of things, is my uncle was a vice president there for 30 years. He had retired, or was going to retire at the time. And he loved the company. So I thought that was, hey, I went to finance. I need to get to the Wall Street-esque type job. Let me try this. Long story short, getting into any big company, sometimes you go into the wrong department, so to speak, and I'm stuck. So I winded up doing a business analyst role. As I learned, is very broad. And I wasn't doing anything with numbers. It was more like, hey, why is this file failing coming through our system? Oh, because it's pipe limited. It was supposed to be semicolons. Again, there's finance information in the file, but it has nothing to do with finance. So I hated it, left. And then I couldn't go back to J&J right away without more work experience to get into those bigger companies again. So I found a local pharmaceutical place. It was a generic company called Hikma. So I was there for 5 years, and I recently just left the corporate world about a month ago. So, I worked 60-hour weeks from the time I graduated until very, very recently.
So talk to us, Kyle, about maybe some of the lessons that you learned, or just some of those important experiences within the business world, within the corporate world, because you kind of have a unique story in the sense of like competitive bodybuilder. You've got the coaching, you have, just an awesome network of athletes that you're connected with, and coaches. And then you're working 60 hours a week within the corporate world, specifically within business. That's pretty unique compared to a lot of the guests that I've brought on. So what are some lessons? What are some experiences that you would like to share with us, maybe to shed some light or some insight into that business world from your own personal perspective?
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing is the bodybuilding world is really small. So I am very unique when I'm in a corporate setting, and because I am a little bigger, I guess, than the average person, you throw off a whole aura around you that you think you might be better than people because you have muscle, stuff like that. People don't look at you the same. It's the same way if there was a blonde, oh, she's ditzy. It's just, pre-cognitive ways of thinking that are ingrained in society from day one, but that are not always true. So for me, it was always kind of, I remember at J&J, a quick story is, their culture there, and why they succeed so well, is because their work-life balance, as well as their culture in terms of just being very friendly. They always say good morning to everyone. So long story short, I was sitting around some folks. I didn't say good morning, and they thought I was intimidating. So they went around saying, oh, he's intimidating. He doesn't say hello. And people, my manager and the team, Kyle's not intimidating. He's pretty soft-spoken. He's like a teddy bear. And that was always my nickname in college, was like Bear, because I might have looked like I was heavy. So I was like, 250 pounds at the time. But I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not looking to get in a fight. I'm pretty well spoken. I talk oftentimes. I don't talk very much at all unless I'm super comfortable. And when I do speak, I try not to raise my voice. And to me, that was just a way of, you respect the situation because I speak low, so you're going to listen. And again, yelling at the end of the day, what does that really accomplish, right? So that itself was a valid issue in the corporate world. And then again, everything is unique. So when I would have to go out for team lunches, oh, Kyle, why can't you eat? Why can't you grab a drink? Because if I was prepping or at least trying to prep, it's just different. People don't understand, and you can't make people understand. You have to also realize, even if you say you're prepping for a show and they bring in donuts and bagels every Friday, they're still going to ask you every Friday. And you can't get upset if they do. I can't snap and say, come on, I told you I'm 2 weeks out, you know? So to me, it was great at keeping me in tune with the real world. Because at the end of the day, bodybuilding it's a small population. You go down, no one really cares if you're a bodybuilder, you know, unless you're, again, you look like Nick Walker or something, then sure, you look freaky, you're cool. But at the end of the day, you're just like anyone else, you know, you're just a bigger guy. You spend a lot of time in the gym. That's always what I would get. Oh, you look like you lift a lot. What do you bench press? You know, silly things like that is very common. But being in that corporate world, I can't snap back. So if I am, you know, at a certain phase of prep where other things are involved, I can't lash out because I'll lose my job. You know what I'm saying? So if I disagree with someone, or I give them a report, or I have to work later and now the gym is pushed back or my meals pushed back, it taught me to just realize that things could always be worse, you know? So what? How are you going to adapt? You know, you can't go to the gym at 7, Kyle. What can you do? You can still get to the gym, you know? So that is one thing I'm grateful for, because I never wanted to lose touch with the reality. And as you know, I would say a lot of time in bodybuilders, there's a lot of meatheads, so to speak. They do a lot of things that aren't intelligent, and they sometimes aren't the best of people. So surrounding myself with people that are super successful in this corporate ladder, there's nothing wrong with it. And before this whole gen, or not the millennials, I'm the millennial, the Gen Y, I guess, right? Is what's the new ones
Gen
are.
Z, maybe? I don't know.
Gen Z, something like that. Now they're all entrepreneurs. But before that, the common thing is you're blue collar workers, right? So I never wanted to lose touch of both aspects of life. So for as long as I could, I said, as my coaching started to pick up a lot, I said, I always want to keep this here, not for a safety net, which obviously I did for sure, especially through the pandemic. It taught me that I was smart to keep a safety net, but it keeps me just in tune with reality, you know, that, hey, thinking about how you look isn't everything. Thinking about what you're eating isn't everything. Pay attention to the stock market, pay attention to things that matter, because 10 pounds at the end of the day, a 10-pound dumbbell is going to be a 10-pound dumbbell. You know, don't miss out on life experiences. And that's what I always hammer home to people.
Very valuable. So what was the impetus for you to decide to step away from the corporate world just recently, as you mentioned? And I'm assuming you are now full-time coaching. Is that correct? And why?
Yeah, so I have a role here at Revive and Raw in finance as well. Again, I can't seem to get I don't like to sit still, and I never want to just depend on one source of income. But really the kicker was I just realized the amount of like money that was able to be made and left on the table didn't make sense anymore. You know, I have a goal at the end of the day. I want to buy my mom, my dad a place to live so they don't ever have to work again. I want to be able to support my brother the way he's pushed me. He doesn't even realize he pushed me. You know, I want to be there to do those things, and you need money in life to do those things, right? But more importantly, money aside, I started to get to a point where I was burnt out. You know, the biggest thing for me is if I look at my Apple Watch, I sleep 3 hours a night. That's it. So the fact that I can be where I am bodybuilding wise is always very impressive to people. And I always say in my head, if I lose to someone, well, you sit on your ass all day. Excuse me. I'm working. I'm doing things all day long. So you had to go to the store for food. Well, wow, congratulations. I leave at 5, I get home at 12. That's it. And then I got to coach, because I can't coach during the day because people are going to see meal plans on my screen when they should be seeing budgets. So to me, I got to a point where I was just burnt out. You know, I got tired of the cycle. So because I was in pharma and the reporting team, the first week of every month, I have all these reports. So those are the real heavy weeks to where I know I'm probably the gym's gonna kind of it's gonna suffer a little bit. Year end, mid-year close, miserable times. Working with auditing teams, miserable. So again, not to say there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed my experience. It was very valuable, but I got to the point where I said, I'm either gonna go to grad school and put this stuff aside, to climb up the corporate ladder, because that's how life works in the corporate structure in the world, or I'm going to be stagnant and it's always going to be 40 hours no matter what, but I'm not actually there. So now I'm a detriment to my team, and I don't want to ever hold people back. So I just said, you know what, I had a great opportunity down here. Like I mentioned, I came down here, one of my clients, Anthony Mantella, who's going to be a bright star in the bodybuilding world. And I said, hey, like, we got this house. And that this is what it's going to be. I'm going to stop working from home. I worked remotely for about a month and a half. And then when they mentioned we got to start coming back in the office, that's when I was like, okay, obviously I can't come back to New Jersey, you know? So that was it for me. You know, I felt I got to the point in my life where I heard a lot of people get to where if you don't jump now, you're never going to jump. And I don't want to risk something. I look at it. I took my plan A for most people, which is going to college, getting a degree, getting that corporate job. And I made it my plan B. I know I could live off coaching confidently, but I just tried to ride it out as long as I could. And if this fails, what I have in place, if coaching becomes nothing, the pandemic starts again and people realize coaching is a luxury and they don't really need the coaching because they can't go to the gym, I could always go back. So that's that.
Options, man. That's a wise way to live, especially the times we're living in. So talking about coaching, when did you start coaching, Kyle? And just talk about the evolution of your own personal coaching. So was it kind of just through trial and error? Did you have a coach that coached you, or a mentor that kind of helped you through that process? Just talk about, again, that evolution of your own coaching.
Yeah, so I got into coaching originally under Philip Vizzacaro. He took me and Nelson Jones, he took on as two apprentices, he called it at the time. And how we got started, we took 10 free clients. And what got me into coaching was simply because Phil identified me as someone, I try to ask wise questions. Okay, so, hey, not why did you put 50 grams of carbs here? It's more sophisticated than that, where the person I'm asking obviously understands I'm not just asking because of a generic reason. I'm asking because I'm generally interested in what the reasoning is. So one day he's had a conversation. He said, look, like, you seem like you kind of pick up on things. Like, did you ever think about coaching? I laughed. I said, no, not at all. And then after I'd done my first show, so I had this Phil I worked with for my second, third show, but I always kept in the back of my mind when we were prepping for that first show, I was prepping with a female and a male at the time. We all had like the same diet. The difference was not in the food items, but the amount of food. And I just said, this felt cookie cutter. It felt like everyone got the same thing, and some people aren't getting results. And as I learned in time, I'm confident I can give a piece of paper to 10 people and it'll work for 2 or 3 of them. I'll post 2 or 3 of them, but what about the other 7? And that's what you see a lot of the times in this whole social media world of coaching. And the turnover is really high for some people because they don't pay attention. They just give you a default plan. And if you do it the proper way, you want to be good at what you do. I want to be 100%. So when someone does something, when I can't get someone in shape, what's going on? I'm doing something wrong. You know, I always tell people, you know, because a lot of people, when they get a program from me, they'll scroll down to the PED section. First thing they do, skip the diet, skip the training, PED. And they'll see maybe nothing there. Oh, did you forget? No, it's performance enhancing, not performance replacing. If I can't get you to lose body fat nutritionally and through training, I'm doing something wrong. Of course, if I put some burners in or something like that, we're going to make progress, you know? So to me, I started to coach under Phil as an apprentice. I had 10 people. And basically, I just took it as an opportunity. I said, okay, you guys are all different. I don't want to give you the same plan because it's not going to work. And slowly but surely over the first year, you know, I never looked at it in terms of monetary. I looked at it in terms of how can I get you to be better than you ever were before? All of you, for the most part, have competed at some point. You work with someone. How can I get you to be better? And from there, I just took it as, like, again, almost a challenge of how can I get this person in shape? And from there, you know, I turned someone pro my first 2 years of coaching. She was a female, did wonderful, you know, really went from nothing to something extraordinary, very good potential. And I just try to replicate it and get people in good shape. because I think that was like a lost art for a while, as people were just chasing this like mass, and they would show up. Like, to me, a lot of people get to that 4-week out mark, and I tell people all the time, congratulations, you got to the 4-week out mark. It's not that hard to get there. To get past that, that's where physically it's super hard, and then mentally ridiculous. It could be, there's so many factors that go into that. If you're not sleeping, if you have external influences that are stressing you out, that's the challenge. And that's where I really try to get on a good terms of communicating with someone. So again, they don't feel like that number. I don't want anyone to feel like it's a cookie cutter program. I want someone to say, wow, you actually know what's going on, Kyle. Like, I told you I followed the plan, and I'm not cheating, but because so-and-so is yelling at me every day, we're in a bad relationship, that's why my body looks stressed. So that's why I took that route of getting into coaching. And then slowly but surely, I started to charge people a little bit. And just word of mouth. I'm terrible with Instagram. I don't post very often at all. To me, I guess it goes back to, I just think sometimes it's not good enough to post. So rarely, if you scroll through my Instagram, there'll be times in which I might get on a good streak. I'll post 3 times in a month, but oftentimes I'll just go ghost. You won't see much. And then you'll see cool content with Nick or Chris Bumstead, random things popping up. And I have tons of the pictures and stuff. I don't know. I don't post, I always look at it like I'm getting this crazy retention. To me, if I get a client, how can I keep you? And I tell people, listen, I do want to coach you forever, but I want you to learn where you don't need me. If I passed away, you know what we're doing, you know what to do. So that's my goal. And yes, I like working with people, but I want them to learn and understand what's going on. So I always encourage questions. I tell people when I first send them a program, especially, like, I expect questions. If you don't ask me questions, there's an issue, right? And I joke around, but once, twice a week, I'll refund people. And the reason for that is not because I don't want to work with them. It's because my time is better served elsewhere. Or they'll ask me a question 3 weeks in, hey, what does EVOO mean? Extra virgin olive oil. You could ask that, what were you doing the last 3 weeks? I'm just curious, because you tell me you follow 100%, but there's questions on here that I purposely put there for you to ask them, and you didn't. So that just gives me kind of an outlook on that type of person. So I always try to tell people, I don't screen genetics. I just screen someone that when it's their set, they're going to get up. I don't care how strong they are, how weak they are. They just want to be better than they were yesterday. And that's how I look on that fat kid. I just want to be better than I was yesterday.
Awesome, man. So let's talk about, you brought up Anthony. I just saw anybody that follows Raw and the crew there, Revive, that we saw everybody kind of posting about Anthony being a part of the team now. So talk about how you got connected with him, and just how bright you think his future could be if he stays focused.
So I got connected with him. So he was 17. So now he's 19. So about 2.5 years ago, he had sent me an email. I ignored it. He sent me another email. I remember I opened it, didn't respond. Finally sent me a third email. Okay. So third email, I said, all right, let me see. There's pictures on this email. Let me look what you look like. And I just remember seeing, like, he had good structure. I said, wow, I didn't answer this kid. Like, damn, this kid looks good. He's at a nearby town, Jackson, New Jersey. I lived in Brick, New Jersey. So it's about a 20-minute ride. And basically the reason I didn't answer the first 2 times was because he said, hey man, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm interested in bodybuilding. To me, I can't even get grown 30-year-olds to follow a plan. How am I going to get a 17-year-old? So I said, okay, this kid's kind of in shape. Like, I don't know if he could do a show, but let me give him a questionnaire. Let me speak to him, make sure his parents are okay with signing up. Let me figure out if he's natural, because I don't want to get into any kind of weird conversations with people. And long story short, I gave him a questionnaire. One of my questions on the questionnaire are, what is your schedule? What do you do for work? Do you go to school? What do you do? And this kid gave me his school schedule, period 1, period 2. And I just left and I said, oh God, like that is not what I meant. School 9 to 3, that's all. That's great. That's what I needed, not geometry, gym class, elective. So I said, hey, let me see if this kid follows it. And I gave him a plan. And he asked the right questions, and he followed the plan. And we did our first show, I think maybe 10 or 11 weeks after he signed up, and he won the overall at Easterns in 2018 was, yeah, 2018. Eastern, he won the overall, beat grown men, and the kid had really good shape. So we went to nationals that year. I had to be his legal guardian. So you have to actually be 18 to compete in NPC usually. So it's a very unique situation. So I was his legal guardian for the weekend. You know, his parents said, "Hey, we just met you, but please take care of our son. You know, we can't be there." So it was interesting, you know, and Anthony is someone, the kid is very humble and hungry. You know, he wants to be better. He wants to surround himself with the right people. Again, I'm always about asking the right question. You can never learn enough. And that's just ties into, you know, where we went from there. We just developed this great coach friendship. Considered, you know, Sir Kyle, and he's Ant. So, you know, we have this great camaraderie now. Now we're living together. So never would have guessed the kid I ignored 3 times I'd live with 2 years later. And then just to, you know, end your question before I ramble more, I think his future, I really think his future is, you know, like I don't like to consider him a next Chris, because I don't think you could ever be someone, but he can be at that level in terms of notoriety and in terms of how good he can be if he stays level-headed, if he's healthy, pays attention, doesn't care something. And I'm willing to bet against anyone that, you know, that kid can, his proportions are just out of this world. He's 19 and he's beating, again, grown men. So, you know, at this point, we're just shutting it down. He had competed this past year at Universe. Not auditioned. What's the word I'm looking for? He did classic physique, a debut in classic physique at Easterns, not Easterns, Atlantic States. He won the overall classic, won the overall men's physique. So he's got great shape and structure. And in bodybuilding, that's it. It's not who's the biggest. Sometimes it's the structure. You pop on stage, and that's, you bring the right conditioning, the right structure, right presentation. You can pose. You're confident. And he's got a whole arsenal of fans behind him that are really just supportive. So he's got the influence he has. I've never seen someone so young have the influence. Yeah, day in and day out, I get people, you know, oh, I see you on Anthony's channel, or you think I can be like him? And I try to be realistic with people, you know. So someone says, "Hey, can I be an Olympian?" and they've been listening for a bit. I'll be honest with them, you know, it's not really in the cards for you. You know, I'm not going to lie to you and try to see you prove me wrong, and by all means prove me wrong, but ultimately, you know, that's kind of where we started, and hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does very thoroughly. I appreciate that, Kyle. So let's talk about, you know, you mentioned you recently just moved down to Florida, so you're kind of more involved with Raw and Revive, and actually you know, have some sort of a role there. Talk about that environment, talk about what that community has meant to you, and what it's kind of done for you, just being around those champions and those entrepreneurs and those people that aren't settling in life.
So it's definitely unique. You know, I think it's like the new mecca of bodybuilding, so to speak. You know, again, I was really good friends with Nick in 2018, going through when he got second in USA's, all the way up until him turning pro and moving 4 days later. I helped him, you know, I came over, helped him move. And him coming down here, he just always had great things to say. He said, "The people down here, Kyle, are great. You would love it." You know, that they all had the same drive that we have, maybe in different realms of things. Some people don't want to be, you know, bodybuilders, but they want to have the next powerhouse supplement company. They're just willing to work as much as they need to work to get that done. And then I was lucky enough, or fortunate enough, you know, in recent years to meet Chris last year. So my conversation with him, again, you know, I don't know if you've ever spoken to him, very down to earth person, you know. Chris, I remember one time he trained in Jersey, and I had to use the bathroom, and I came out of the bathroom. He's just sitting at the bar, the shake bar, like a normal person. And like, it's just, to me, again, those are little examples, but like, they say so much about someone, because, you know, fame changes people. It changes your social network. It changes what you think, how you stand out. And for these two people, Nick and Chris, for example, they're the same people they were. And Nick, again, I know a lot. I have a better relationship with Nick just from our time together, but from just observing Chris, these people, nothing changed them. They're the same people they were. And that's very, very difficult to find in society, especially nowadays with the social media. It changes everything. So down here, it's just wonderful. The equipment at the gym is top notch. Again, I'm in a gym. I turn left, I see Nick. I turn right, Ian. In front of me, Chris. Behind me, Anthony. You can't ask for more than that. You really can't. So it's awesome.
What's business wise, Kyle, for you? What is your vision or your goal or mindset moving forward?
Business wise, I really want to take Raw and Revive. I want to help build this to be that next brand that, people look at and they're just like, wow, how'd they get there so fast? It's a 2-year-old company and they were doing very well with sales. The products we're coming out with, we want to make sure they're top notch. They're, not only thoroughly tested, but they're helping people reach goals. If it's a thyroid product we're coming out with, it's a combination of ingredients that are actually needed to do X job correctly, So being a part of a company that just has the ability and drive to want to change the supplement industry is important. And in recent years, a lot of supplement companies, it's kind of like a game, man. What's in the bottle is not in the bottle. It's about making money and profit margin and things like that. And I understand from coming from the business side of things, I know how it is, but I want to change the outlook on that. So being apart from the business side, that's what I look for. And as far as my coaching, again, I just try to get quality athletes. I try to get people in shape. Don't care how many Olympians I develop over the years or how many pro cards I get. I just want people to know, you come to me, whatever your goal is now my goal. And if that goal changes and you don't tell me, then you can expect me to be holding you to that goal. And I don't care if you're just the blue collar worker that's just trying to get in shape for a wedding, or you're Anthony trying to become the next IFBB pro and really try to get somewhere. If you don't miss your check-in, if you're following everything to a T, I'm going to put the time you put in as the time I put back to you. So to me, eventually I see this, I'd like to have a coach eventually under me and under ProFX. I know we're going to do more educational pieces and things like that to spread information. Again, I don't use social media the way I should. And I see a lot of misinformation out there sometimes, and just due to not having the platform, the same person, I can post a video and the other person can post the same video. And if that person's page is 20 times larger and has a greater outreach, that video gets looked at and the other person doesn't, because that's how social media works. So it's a matter of just, again, building that proper content that's actually going to help people. I always tell people, when you're advanced and you know something, you want to be able to explain it as simplistically as possible. You don't need to use fancy words to get the audience engaged or say, oh, he's smart. I want to dumb it down to the point where it is, oh, that's it. And it's easy to do. You know what I'm saying? That's my goal, business driven wise.
Awesome. So let's talk just a little bit here. We're gonna wrap up our conversation. We've been going for almost an hour here. I want to be respectful of your time. I do want to ask you about training. Do you have like a specific training philosophy or a way that you prefer to train for yourself personally? Or I know you said you kind of just go, if you have a training partner, you kind of let them lead, so to speak. What does that look like for you personally? Again, generally speaking, Kyle.
So I would say in my time, you need a hybrid of a number of things, either hypertrophy rep range as well as really just volumizing the muscle. Okay. So I would say a combination. I had the opportunity to lift with John Meadows and Guy Sisterino before John passed. And I was able to just ask him, again, some of those key questions in my head I always would want to ask, but I'll never type it to someone. And understanding his philosophy and how it changed over the years. You'll see a lot of people sometimes just chase recently this progressive overload kick to where they have the logbook and they're always beating the logbook. That's great, but for the most people, that doesn't work. So I always tell people, hey, you're squatting 400 pounds, you have no legs. Do you really think the answer is 500 pounds or 600 pounds? No, it's the way you're mechanically performing the exercise. You're not executing it the right way. So perhaps abandoning it. If you don't feel the exercise, don't do it. If the range of motion doesn't work for you, don't do it. So for me, I take a hybrid approach, and lifting with Nick, I explained that approach, and I think that helped them tremendously to where, again, when you have genetic anomalies like that, anything kind of works, but challenging people to control the eccentric, controlling tempos, doing iso holds, stuff like that has a time and a place. And, I always just look at it going back to when people first started lifting. They do 2 days in the gym, and it's not the quantity, it's the quality, right? So I always want, if a set's going to be 10 reps, I want it to be challenging from rep 1, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to where I need a spot for the other 9 reps. It's just that I'm really keeping the maximum tension on the muscle, because at the end of the day, your muscle doesn't know how heavy something is. Only we do, right? So I always say, it'd be cool to have a gym where everything looks the same. You don't know how heavy it is, because I feel like people will be so much better. A lot of the time, there's ego when it comes to things. Oh, you did 3 plates, I'm going to do 4 plates. If everything looked the same, I feel like people would look so much better, because you're challenging yourself with the right load. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're still lifting a 30-pound dumbbell 2 years from now, your arms are probably not much bigger. But again, if I give someone a 30-pound dumbbell and I say, hey, I want you to fail at 10, I know you can do 15, but fail at 10, what are you going to do? You're going to go slower. You're going to squeeze harder. Things like that are what matters more in training. And then at the end of the day, to come full circle, you could execute flawlessly training, but then it becomes the nutritional part of things, recovery, sleeping, stuff like that. So.
Excellent. Something you would like to see change within bodybuilding. That could be the competitive side, that could be the coaching side, that could be just the community in general. Is there something when I ask it at Kyle that pops to mind right away?
Yeah, a lot actually. I guess just starting with the coaching side, everyone's a coach now. They do a show, and then, I even have a lot of my own clients that become coaches, and I know they're just taking my stuff and replicating it, waterproofing their own logo on something, so to speak. But at the end of the day, like I said, you give that piece of paper to 10 people, it's only going to work for 2 or 3. What about the other 7? So I think those people don't last very long anyway. But more, again, I just wish people understood nutrition a little bit more and didn't depend on, drugs, so to speak, to get someone in shape. And, that ties into, in this recent year, obviously we're seeing a lot of passing of individuals, and that's sad. And we can't link it to one thing specifically, but I do know in the recent years, a lot of people think more is better in regards to everything. And though that's not the case, maybe for the most recent deaths that are popping up or anything, but I do get concerned in the next 5 to 10 years. I know kids, they see it on social media. Oh, he took this, let me take double, because they see it. 12, 20 years ago, we didn't see things. We might have heard, oh, so-and-so is using this, but now you have people that come out and they post these crazy transformations, and they say, oh, I did this. So that puts a mindset in people to where they think it's attainable. And that's scary. So I always just try to tell people, less is more. There's a time and a place. Do I think you should compete every year? No, I don't compete every year. Not because I'm indifferent about competing. Like I said, it comes with a lot of sacrifices, physically, mentally, for sure. But what is your goal? If your goal is to put on muscle, if you're dieting for 8 months of the year, you're not putting on muscle. I don't care what you're pumping into your body. You're just not going to put on the muscle you need. And when you do, I get a lot of young adults now, and some of them have great genetics, put on some good size. Oh, Kyle, can I do a show? You want to win? Well, of course I want to win. I said, okay, well, you just put on 15, 20 pounds of muscle in a year and a half, and you just want to diet. What do you think is going to come off first? The body fat that was there for 20 years or the muscle you just put on in the last year? You got to acclimate, give your body time to adjust and to basically stabilize at a new set point. So that's the reason I just think people should be patient. The improvements that are made are made in the off season. You don't have to be neurotic to where you never have a cheat meal or be one of those people that go to Thanksgiving dinner with a Tupperware. But again, there's a time and a place. You want to stay healthy. You want to focus on what matters most. Give the time back to your significant other. If you're prepping 12 months a year, again, what is your ultimate goal? And then work. I always tell people, where do you want to go? Okay, work backwards. How do you get there? Set realistic goals that might be just out of reach, but they're realistic enough. And that's how you can actually really build a system to get there.
In terms of setting goals for yourself personally, is that something that you write down, or are goals just something that you kind of keep collecting in the back of your mind?
So it'd be clear. I'd like to just say I write them down, but I would be lying, and I don't want to lie. So I collect a lot of them in the back of my mind. You know, I think about when I had asked you, hey, you know, is there any kind of outline or questions? Because I try to be perfect at everything. And that's my biggest flaw, is trying to be perfect, because you can't replicate situations and environments as much as we want to. We can just put ourselves as much as possible in these test environments to know how to react if it happens, right? Just like a fire drill. If you take it seriously enough, if it ever happens, you know what to do because you practiced it 10 times. You rehearsed the play over and over. You practiced. So yeah, I mean, that's the main thing there, you know.
Cool. So we're gonna wrap it up here just in a minute. From your perspective, best New Jersey bodybuilder of all time?
I gotta go with Nick at this point. You know, I seen him start from the ground up, and that kid, I'll be damned if anybody's gonna stop him, you know, I'll be honest.
I agree 100%. Let's finish up with this. So if you just as I asked this, thinking about bodybuilding, all of your experiences, what has bodybuilding taught you, or what has it given you? Kind of that number one or number two thing, Kyle.
Two things. It's taught me patience. Nothing comes overnight. Nothing. Just like studying for an exam, it doesn't. You wait till the last second, you might do okay, but if you practice the entire week, what would you have done? Bodybuilding, you put on muscle slowly. You know, if you do everything right in a given year, I don't care what you take or don't take, you can only put on so much muscle. Okay. And then it's also taught me, again, don't judge a book by its cover. When I hear bodybuilders, the first thing I always think, I still think, unintelligent people. Why would you do that to your body? Why would you deprive yourself of food? It don't make sense. I like ice cream. Why would I not want to have ice cream for 16 weeks? But basically what I'm saying by not judge a book by its cover is I've met some really great, sophisticated individuals. And had I not gotten to bodybuilding, had I started my life in Florida way earlier, going to University of Florida, I wouldn't have met any of these people, right? So bodybuilding has given me, again, the best of both worlds. It's given me an opportunity to see and meet individuals that can make an impact, that can influence the world. Because, you know, I didn't get into bodybuilding because of social media, because that didn't exist. Unfortunately, I'm 29 now, but social media wasn't really a thing when I was in college. So yeah, patience. And then again, not judging a book by its cover. So a bit cliche, but it's real. It's the realest I can be, you know?
And, you know, I love that you've brought that up a couple of times. Don't judge a book by its cover, because that literally is the impetus behind this podcast, hence behind the muscle, right? If I didn't have this conversation with you, I would look at you, I'd look at your physique on Instagram, and I'd probably have preconceived notions just like everybody else, right? But because I have this podcast, I give people like yourself the platform. All of us get to realize, like, hey, Kyle Wilkes, there's a lot more than the muscle. So that's really what I'm passionate about, and why I have the podcast, Kyle, is so that other people can realize, man, from bodybuilders, elite coaches, we can glean so much, right? So I think it's really cool that you brought that up, and that really is the main impetus behind the podcast. So with that being said, Kyle, if you have any final thoughts or words that you'd like to leave myself and the listeners, I would love to have you do that at this time. And then if somebody would like to reach out to you and connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah. So the final thought would just be, you know, never think you're good enough to not learn more. You never know who you can learn from. Just observing. Sometimes you don't need to interject your opinion. Just sit back and watch. And that's what I do a lot of the times, not because I'm not engaged. I just observe. I see what's going on. Does that person look the same? Are they changing a lot? Who are they working with? Why? What's going on? You know, I take us, to me, I learn the most from afar sometimes. And then in closing, you mentioned where they could reach me. Yes. So you can reach me on my Instagram, and my handles at kyle.wilkes. or my email. So my email is in my bio. My email is also teamprofx.kyle@gmail.com. And again, I encourage people, don't reach out to me just for coaching rates or whatever. If you have questions, fire them away. And I try to get back to people and let them know, if the question's super generic, I'll just give them a generic answer, but I just try to lead people in the right direction in terms of what they're looking for. If I can help them, great. If I can't, hey, reach out to this person. I think they'll do a good job.
Awesome. Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your story and taking some time to chop it up with me. It's greatly appreciated.
Not a problem. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been an honor. I don't do many podcasts. Just never something I kind of came across yet. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to doing some more.
For sure. You're very welcome. And I know you got that perfectionist mentality. You did a great job, man. And I know that myself and the listeners gained a lot. So those of you tuning on YouTube, those of you that are listening on your favorite podcast platform, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in, for listening once again to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast. If it wasn't for you, the podcast wouldn't exist. So 2 favors I would ask of all of you. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's very important because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube, and then I distribute them to all the other podcast platforms. The second thing I would ask of all of you, take this episode of Kyle's and share it on all of your social media platforms. Make sure you tag Kyle. Make sure you tag Behind the Muscle so that we know that you listened and you found a great value in this specific episode with Kyle. One other thing I'd ask of you guys, if you are on YouTube and you're listening to this, watching this, why don't you just go ahead in the comment section below, leave your favorite part of Kyle's story, or maybe an insight that you gleaned from Kyle sharing today on the podcast. Just leave that in the comment section so that we can, again, see that you guys were really tuned in, that you guys are learning, and that you guys appreciate Behind the Muscle podcast. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.